Hey, welcome back again. We are going to make a new game today. It's going to be fun. I'm going to flip to the next slide. The new game we're going to make is called Snake. Bob, you want to talk to us a little bit about overall camp things and where we're at?
Yeah, sure. Last time, if you joined us with our videos in order, we made a game called Unicorn Runner where we had a horse unicorn going across the screen. All we controlled was its up and down. We reviewed coordinate systems. That was a y-axis change that we made there as the horse ran across to catch apples and avoid crabs. Today, we're going to be moving a snake that's going to be growing in length the longer we live. So we're going to move around. You can see on the little screenshot there the dark purple, kind of the head of the snake, and then the lighter purple tail that's trailing behind it. It's going to move. We're going to control it with arrows to try to steer ourselves towards the apple. Every time we grab an apple, the apple's going to reappear somewhere, and our tail is going to get just a little bit longer. And to stay alive, we have to avoid the edges and avoid our own tail. So this will incorporate a lot of concepts that we talked about last time. It's going to introduce some new concepts that we'll talk about here in the next slide. And hopefully after this game, we'll have enough concepts in our tool belt to move on to the big game of Ladybug Shooter that we'll see you in the next video for.
Yeah, so it's kind of like the last little thing before the big thing that comes. Let's take a look at it. I always enjoy running a solution just so you kind of see what we're going after. Try to hide the code here. So if you've ever played a snake game, the idea is that I'm using the arrow keys to run around. So I'm just hitting left to go left, down to go down, right to go right, up to go up. By the way, you can also get versions of the snake game that are what's called relative motion. Not going to get into that. My goal is, of course, to collect the apple. And then every time I collect an apple, you'll notice that my tail gets a little bit longer. And so the idea of the snake game is that you play for as long as you can. That one's kind of hidden behind the numbers up there. And to get your tail to be super long. It starts off pretty easy. And then I'm not going to play the whole time because I can play I'm pretty good at this game, right? And then if you goof up, there's two ways you can goof up. Either you can hit a wall or you can hit your own tail. I'm going to hit my own tail here. So if I come in and then there I hit my tail, you can see that I lost. It says that my final score was 1.9, and that gave me the top score of 1.9. And so you can kind of see that's the idea. You can play again. Also, if you hit a wall, you die if you hit a wall as well. My final score was apparently 1 because my length was 0.1. So that's the game that we're going to be making. Going to be learning about a lot of new skills in this game just to kind of point at some of the things that we're going to be teaching about. I'll do the first like 3 or 4, then Bob can do the last couple. We're going to do movements with the keyboard events. So last time we did movement with an if statement. This time we're going to be using events. We're also moving a little differently. This time we're going to be pointing in a direction. We're just going to be moving whatever way we point. We're going to do some things with clones. We'll see that when we get there. We're going to do some things with variables. You saw that we had that length variable in the top score. And then we're also going to try to use a custom function, also called a block. Bob, you want to take the last couple?
Yeah, sure. The remaining ones are ones that we saw last time. All the concepts below are things that we saw, at least in some way, and maybe not wait. So if statements, these are just the way that we code in decision making, things that you do all the time as a human, deciding whether or not to grab a raincoat, deciding whether or not you want to eat. It's all based on your brain making decisions based on current events. In this case, we're going to want to know if we're touching things, and if so, it's going to change the way that we do things in the code. If we're touching the apple, we're going to want it to disappear and reappear somewhere else, and we're going to want it to increase our score. If we're touching our own tail, we're going to want the game to end. Randomness, as we saw in the last game, where the apple appears, where the crabs appeared, are more fun if it's not always in the same spot. And so being able to introduce that randomness is going to make the game more fun, more playable. So we're going to do that again here. And then a wait, sometimes just having a little bit extra time before your code continues can be very useful. So we're going to see how that can be used in our code as well. And just to be clear, whenever you're designing a game, if you have a game idea, there's no list of certainty in terms of the concepts you're going to use. When Dave and I came up with this list, it was after the game was created. We went back and looked at all the things that we did, and we kind of made a list. But the things that we did came through a number of iterations and thinking and trying things before we finalized the code. So we hope you understand that when you're watching us take you through a build, this build was the result of a few different iterations and really thinking through how to do various things. And we'll try to talk you through those decisions as we come up on them as we're describing the game.
Cool. Let's build it. So head on over to Scratch, MIT.edu, and we'll just create a new game. So this new game, this is going to be my snake game. So I'm just going to call it Snake up here at the top. As you have probably noticed, this game comes with a cat. There's no cats in my game. I'm going to delete the cat. Are you sure you want to delete the cat? Yeah, I'm sure I want to delete the cat. And what I want to do this time is I want to make my own sprite. So you can see I have no sprites down here. To make your own sprite, what you can do is normally we click on the circle, and then that brings us to the sprite library. But you'll notice that there's this little like pull-up ribbon, right? And there's actually different things you can do here. One thing you can do is you can upload a sprite, like you can get an image from the internet and put it in here. You can surprise me, who knows what you're gonna get. You can draw your own, that's the paint option here, or you can choose from the library. Clicking on the circle or clicking the magnifying glass, same. I'm gonna paint my own sprite because this snake, it's actually just a circle that moves. And we can draw a circle, so we're just going to click on Paint. And so I'm going to call this sprite, I'll just call it Snake. I thought about calling it like Circle or Snake Circle or something like that, but I'll just call it Snake. All right, so how do I draw a circle? So the drawing tools are really fun. This is the drawing palette over here. You can draw with the like a pencil, like a paintbrush style. You can draw with filling things, or you can make custom shapes like a line, a square, or here's the one that I want, a circle. Whenever you draw, you always draw in some color. It looks like it's going to draw a purple circle, which would be good. And then it's got an outline, which is going to be black. I don't actually want the outline, so I'm going to change the color of the outline to be non-existent. So this like red line here means no outline. So I'm going to get rid of the outline. Purple seems like a fine color to me. Feel free to make your snake any color you'd like. And you just have to drag out a circle. It looks like I could make my circle like really an ellipse. If I hold down Shift, that's funny, I thought that worked different, but that's okay. If I hold down Shift, it'll make it a perfect circle. And so a perfect circle is what I want. To be honest, the size doesn't really matter because you can change the size in two ways. You can change the size when you draw it over here, but if you were to draw it huge, oh, there you go. Whenever I resize it, that's where I have to not hold Shift. If I make the size huge over here, that's no big deal because I can just make this the size over here be small. So some combination, get it to where it is roughly, yay big sounds good, right? And so you can see that I've got some space to where I'll be able to use this. If it turns out to be too big, you can always change it later. It's no problem at all to change it later. So I did this. Any combination you use to get it about that big, it'll be just fine. All right, so this is actually got to be the head of the snake. And then I'm also going to have costumes for the tail of the snake. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this costume. To duplicate it, I believe you can right click on it and say duplicate. And this next costume is going to be the exact same, just a different shade of purple. To change the existing thing, I need to select it. That's where this little, like, this is like a cursor tool. I select it here, and then I change the shade to be something different. I'm just going to make it like a much lighter shade of purple. Cool. If you want to use two totally different colors, that's fine. But there's the head of the snake and then the body, and so those are the two colors that we need. You could also name the costumes. Right now mine are called Costume 1 and Costume 2. I think those are just fine names. I'm just going to leave those be. All right, let's go write some code. Let's also, I don't like being on a white background. We got to be on something different. To change the background, you can click on the circle in the lower right over here, and you can just pick some background. You can pick any background you want. I'm feeling outer spacey again, Bob. I'm feeling all nebula today. You're right.
Yeah,
with
the things
nebula?
you'd want to look for when you're deciding on a background really is just making sure, and I think Dave was doing this in the back of his head, making sure that you don't have a lot of colors that are going to make it hard to see your items. So our snake is dark purple and light purple, and our apple that we already are planning on using, although we could always change that, is red. And I think when Dave saw this image, he saw not a lot of really dark purples, not a lot of light purples, and no bright reds. So all of our objects should appear pretty visible. But this is always something that you can change. This isn't frozen. If we decide that this was too dark of a background or we wanted to go back to the moon that we showed in the sample solution, that would be an easy thing to do.
Cool. All right, so we've got a costume here, or sorry, a sprite here with two costumes. I think what I want to do is I want to start off with an event for when green flag click. This is how most of my games start. I click on events, and I bring in a when green flag clicked. And then just so you can see it better, I'll zoom in a little bit. To start my game, what I want to do is I want to make sure that I'm in costume number 1. That's the head of the snake. That's a command for looks. And you can find here, switch to costume 1. I would also like to start off in the very middle of the screen, so I would like to change it to where I'm starting off in the middle. So I can do that with motion. And I can say go to XY. Now we noticed this last time, but right now it says -63, -9 for me. Yours will be different numbers. That's because where mine happens to be sitting right now is at -63, -9. And so when I hit the green flag, I want it to go to 0, 0. Cool, so that'll just make sure it starts off in the middle. I also would like to make sure that I'm pointing to the right. This is because my movement is going to be based on what direction I'm pointing, and I'm a control freak, right? I want to make sure I'm starting off pointing to the right. So I'm going to grab this point in direction 90, and if you click on the 90 here, you can see that 90 is to the right, that way. And so if I hit the green flag right now, those things should happen. And so it switched me to my costume 1. It put me right in the middle of the screen. And then the point in direction 90, you can't see yet because it's a circle. But when you start moving, you'll see it then. All right, let's go ahead and make movement start happening. And so what I want to do is the snake is always moving, right? And so it's not just for a little while, it's always moving. And so I want a forever loop. So in control, I'm going to grab a forever loop. And then inside the forever loop, I'm going to grab a move. And I did that kind of fast, but it's because I've been making scratch games for a while, right? The forever loop was right here in control, and then the move was right up in motion. And I'm going to make my game move at 5. Cool. So you can run it right now. It won't be very exciting, but it should move at 5. It'll slam into the wall. If you were to grab it, it's just like we did in the last game. It'll keep on moving to the right. Notice that it won't go past the wall. That's just a feature that Scratch gives you. It'll stop you from letting you completely lose your sprite. If I were to run it again, it does the same thing. Seems pretty clear that what I need to do next is I need to have some way to change the direction, right? So I switch the direction. Last time, what we did is we put in if statements, because if you were pressing the up arrow, then we wanted it to move up. If you were pressing down arrow, we wanted it to move down. So that's actually reading what's called the state of the button. So the button state, it's either pressed or not pressed. Here we actually just want an event. Like when up arrow is pressed, I want to set the direction to point up. And so there's very different code that you can write depending on which one you want. So instead of if statements, which is what I used last time, I'm going to go into events, and I'm going to grab when space key pressed. And of course, I don't want space key. I want up arrow for this first one. And when up arrow is pressed, I want to point in direction. So motion, point in direction. Where is it at? Here's point in direction. And when the up arrow is pressed, no surprise, I want to point up. That's enough code to where I could run it. If I hit play right now and I hit up, you can see it switches and it goes up. You can probably guess what we're going to do next. So what we're going to do next is we're going to do left, right, and down. To do left, right, and down, I could totally bring over the event again. That'd be fine, and bring over the motion again. I'm going to be sneaky. I'm going to copy this one and then change it. There's a couple ways you can copy. One way you can copy is you can grab it and you can hit Control C, Control V. So that's a standard copy paste. And then this one, I'm going to switch to left arrow and point to the left. Another way that you can copy something is you can right click on it and say duplicate. That's a fine way to make a copy of something. So left and right. Right, I want to go that way. And then there's other ways you can duplicate too, but I think those are the main ones. I'll just duplicate another one and do down and down. Cool. And so now you can see how if you're getting good at Scratch, you can start to do things pretty quickly, which is kind of fun. And so now I've got this game where I can move all around. I'm pretty excited about this game, but it will become boring before too long. And so I think what I'd like to do is I'd like to make either an apple to collect. That's one thing I could do next. I could make a tail so that I actually get longer, so you could actually see the tail. Bob, which one do you feel like doing? What do you feel like doing next?
It feels like getting the snake to grow is going to be a pretty fun challenge. Let's
Cool.
go ahead and see what that looks like.
All right.
Because
So,
I've seen games that don't even have the apple component. That just after every period of time you grow, and you have
okay.
to try to outlast the time. But and that could be something that the viewer decides that they want to just stop at. Of course, they'd have to change the way it grows because right now we're going to grow whenever we grab an apple. But
Cool. So we're going to do growth of the tail. So how do you make the tail grow? I need to give credit to the student who came up with this idea. Her name was Mackenzie Hunt. She's a student, Rolls-Holman, that teaches Scratch for me to kids. And she had a really clever idea. Let's go. I'm going to look at the solution. We're going to try to understand her strategy for what she did. So she obviously has this like purple thing and then this purple tail. And the question is, how does it move? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make some changes to it so we can see some of the sneakiness that she did, and then we're going to apply it to ourselves. So here's what I'm going to do that's sneaky. I'm going to slow the snake down. I'm going to make the snake only move every 2 seconds. So this is going to start off being extremely slow. And so you can see that it just takes 2 seconds and then it does another move, right? So it's kind of painful to start with. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make each one bigger. You're just watching right now, just so that we can more easily see what a jump is. And so you can see that really what the snake is doing is he's just jumping some number of pixels every so often. And in our game, he's moving 5 pixels really rapidly. And so instead of every 2 seconds, it's really rapidly. And so what Mackenzie decided to do is that every time the snake moved, she's actually making a clone of it. And that clone kind of sticks behind her. And the question is, how long does that clone stick around? Now I'm going to have to undo a couple of these things. And the clone sticks around for a length seconds. So let me try to
even before you do that, if you hit go, you could see a little flash of that light purple where the dark purple was. Watch it bounce, and a little light purple circle kind of stays behind before it disappears.
Yeah. And so the reason that it's only a flash is because it's there for 0 seconds. And it turns out you can actually kind of see 0 seconds, which is funny. If I wanted to make it a little longer, oh, actually, no, it's there for 150 milliseconds. If I wanted to make it longer, I'm going to give myself a longer tail. I'm going to make my tail last for, I don't know, I'll say 7 seconds. So now if I run it again, what happens is the head of the snake is going to move, and then the tail is going to still be there for 7 more seconds. And so you can kind of see how a trail of these tails is getting left over. And the clones that are getting made, they last for a certain length of time, and that length of time that they last is the length of the snake. Pretty clever. All right, I better put back this code or else I'm going to mess up the solution. So I'm going to take that out. So we're going to do that. And so I just kind of wanted to motivate what it is we're going to do. And so if you remember some of those things we did, every step we're going to make a clone of ourselves, which is going to be exciting. Clones are a fun thing. They're in control, and they are near the bottom of control. So there's when I start as clone, and then there's create clone. So we're going to use both of these. So when I start as clone, and we're going to use create clone. We want to create clone every time we move. And so we're going to move to the next spot, and we're going to create a clone of ourselves and kind of leave it there, right? You could create the clone before you move, or you could create it after. It goes so fast you won't notice, right? So it doesn't really matter. And so when I start as clone, if I were to run it right now, I would leave a huge tail, right? And so every time I move, I'm creating a clone. Interestingly, you will eventually make the computer mad, and it'll stop making clones for you. I think you get about 200 or so before it stops making clones for you. So you'll notice that I stopped making clones because I was never cleaning them up. And that's using a lot of memory if you never clean them up. And so I think that's kind of a neat little demo. And so what we want to do is we want to switch to the other costume after a little bit, and then stay on the screen for a little while. I'm going to hard code some things to start with. So we're going to wait 1 second. Then we're going to switch the costume to 2. And then we're going to wait 2 seconds. And then after we've waited 1 second, still as a head, and then 2 seconds as a tail, then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to delete the clone. Deleting the clones is back over in control. Wait might be new, but it's such a simple concept. I think you'll be able to find it pretty quickly. Wait was at the top of control. Deleting clones is at the bottom. All right, so right now it's hard-coded. And so it's going to create a head section. And the idea of the head section is that it's a non-deadly part of the body. And then it's going to create a tail section. And so you'll notice that there's 1 second of every clone being head color, and then 2 seconds of being tail color. And we're going to make it to where if I were to hit the tail, I would die if I hit the tail. The reason you don't die if you hit the head is because if you think about it, when you turn just like left or right, you actually touch yourself for just a little bit. And so we want the head to be some number long, but obviously 1 second worth is quite a bit too long, right? So we're going to tweak it some. So the length of this top number is how long the head is. Mackenzie picked 150 milliseconds, or 0.15, and I think that looked pretty good. So now that makes my head a little shorter. And then the tail, right now the tail is always 2 seconds long. The tail is going to vary. And you can hear with the word vary that we're going to need the word variable as well. So I'm going to go ahead and stop it. And instead of 2 seconds, I'm going to make a variable. So go to variables, make a variable, and the variable is going to be called length. Okay. Length starts off at 0. I want it to start at 0 every time the game starts, though. And so very common. The first thing you do with a variable is you create it. Now it exists. You set its initial value. So somewhere in the early part of your code here, I'm just going to set the length to be 0, so it's definitely 0. And then down here, I'm going to use that variable. It's going to be length right there. Now, the thing that I'm missing with variables is nobody ever changes the variable. So I will have to do that. But right now, you can see that my head is this 150 milliseconds long. By the way, at 150 milliseconds, I'm not even sure how many clones are there. There's probably like 15 clones in there, but it doesn't matter to me. And then interestingly enough, I wasn't sure about this, but you can actually see the tail, like the very tip of the tail is a certain length long. So even 0 seconds, somehow or another, it gives you 1 frame at least, and you can actually see that just fine, right? Cool. All right, we're ready to increase our length. To increase the length, well, you could increase the length here, right? You could just give yourself a 3-second tail. There you go, I've got a 3-second tail. But in order to increase the length, what I want to do is I want to collect apples. There's still no way you can die, by the way. So if you ram into the wall, no big deal. You ram into your tail, no big deal. We haven't covered dying yet, right? All right, I'm going to put the length back to 0. And I'm going to introduce something to collect. I'm going to collect apples. Apparently my snake likes to eat apples. Apple is a built-in sprite, so all I have to do to add an apple is I can just click on this circle. Just to prove that I can click on the circle, or I can click on this magnifying glass. And apple starts with A, so it's right on the first page. Apple. Cool. My apple is just a little on the big side. No big deal. I'm just going to come into the size here and make it smaller. Maybe a 50% apple. It's about the same size as the snake. You could go with a smaller apple or whatever you want, right? So totally flexible. What does the apple need to do? Well, the apple needs to start in a random position. So the apple right now has no code, but I'm going to write some code for it. I'm going to start with when green flag clicked. By the way, if you ever need a break, just pause me. Take a little break. I keep on chugging along, but just pause me if you need to. How do we make a random position? Go to motion. And I'm going to do something here to keep it simple, but later we'll make it better once we see that simple could be a little better. So I'm going to go to a random position. And so every time I hit the green flag, the apple should go somewhere random. And it actually, okay, here's a good example. It actually works pretty well, except for the fact that you can kind of get like halfway on the screen. 2 options. One is if that doesn't bother you, if you consider that a feature, you don't have to change it, right? It does bother me a little bit. I also don't like if I get too close to here, it goes like under the scoreboard, right? And so what I want to do is I want to make it more complicated so that that never happens, so that it never goes right under the scoreboard or right off the side. So the question is, how do I do it, right? And what we're going to do is we're going to use, instead of go to random, which was great, but a little not detailed enough, we're going to use go to XY. Now, at first, this looks worse because it says go to this number. And we're going to go to operators, and we're going to pick random for the X, and then pick random for the Y. Now, if I were to run the game right now, I've made it much worse because the 1 to 10 is not nearly big enough a range. They're all like right in that zone. You can do this, or you can just watch me. One thing that I like to do is there's a background called the grid. I'm going to put the grid up. So I'm going to click on this add background button in the lower right here, and I'm going to put up my best friend, the grid. Right there.
And really quickly, I think it was clear Dave was pumping that green flag button just to get an idea of where that apple was showing up randomly. So every time he presses it, he was looking to see, oh yeah, it's all just within this little narrow range.
Yeah, because 1 to 10 is not nearly big enough of a range. All right, so what is the limits of the range? Well, if I take the apple and I kind of put it over here, I can see that the farthest over this way is -240. But to be honest, I don't really like for it to go off the screen at all. In fact, I probably am going to leave it out just a little off the screen, just to make my game a little easier. I think 220 is a nice round number. So my X can go anywhere from negative 220. And I could do that same thing on the other side, but I don't need to. I know that if it goes to negative 220, it could also go up to positive 220. So if I spam click this now, you can see that it goes anywhere in this range, and it won't ever go like way off to the side. Next up is the Y. The Y, I never like when it goes under there by a whole lot, so maybe the highest I'll go is like there. There you go, that looks pretty good to me. That is 140. And here they may be slightly different because the bottom I'm okay with more like, I'm okay with like 160. So negative 160. So notice this time they actually are slightly asymmetric, and that way it'll keep it from going under the length variable label there. Cool. So I'm pretty happy with that. All right, now I need to actually like be catchable, right? So if I catch the apple, I want it to disappear. I want it to show up somewhere else, and so we'll do those things. And I want to make that length variable longer. Before I do any of those things, though, I'm going to go back to my nebulous. By the way, you can have as many backdrops as you want. What I did here, I'm working too fast today, Bob. I went to the stage. I went to the backdrops. You can see that I've got 3 backdrops. I've got white, I've got a nebulous, and I've got a grid. I'm going to go ahead and delete the white one. Don't need it anymore. I'm going to set it to the nebula, which is this one here. And I might need that grid again, so I could leave it around. Or to be honest, I could delete it because I'm probably done with it. It doesn't really matter. All right, back to the nebula. Looks beautiful. Over to the apple. What I want the apple to do is I want the apple to sense if the snake is touching him, right? I'm going to do it wrong just for fun, and then we're going to see what's wrong about it. And so what I want to do is I want the apple to see if the snake is touching him. So I'm going to go to control, and I'm going to bring an if statement in. And the thing I want to do with my if statement is I want to see if I'm touching the snake. So if I'm touching, that's in sensing. And I want to see if I'm touching, notice it says mouse pointer here, but it's got to drop down. You can drop this into here, and you can drop it down. You say if I'm touching the snake. What I want to do if I'm touching the snake is I want to increase the length. So I'm going to say variables, change length by, and right now it's changing it by 1. 1's a pretty big number. It depends on how rapidly you want your game to get faster. I'm going to, for right now, set it to 0.5. That's much higher than where Mackenzie did hers. She did 0.1. With 0.1, it's a very like slow but steady build game. I'm going to make mine, at least for testing, go a little faster, right? So the tail is going to get longer faster. I'm also going to make the apple go to a new random position. I now have a slight problem in that I want to type this whole thing a second time. Now, when you type something the same way twice, you can do that, right? So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to kind of like break them up. I'm going to say duplicate, and then I'm going to put it into here as well. And then I'm going to put it back together. But we're going to do better than that. Before we do better than that, though, let's fix my bug. Some people see it already. And so I'm going to run my game, and then I'm going to collect the apple. And it's going to work. It's going to fail, right? It's going to fail miserably. And so the question is, wait a minute. I thought my code looked fine, right? It says if touching snake, if that happens, change the length variable. Like it's not working. It's not working at all. And so, Bob, you want to explain to him why it's not working at all?
You want to show me again one more time what it's doing so I can talk it through?
So what it's currently doing is I'm collecting the apple, and my if statement is not working. And so I left something out on purpose just to see who would catch it. Did Bob catch what I did wrong here?
I did not.
That's quite all right.
I was not paying close enough attention. I
No problem at
apologize.
all. The thing that I'm doing is I am checking one time if I'm touching the apple. You'll notice that if you go to the snake code, it's outlined in yellow. That means it's actively running, right? But if you go to the apple code, it's not running anymore. It did its check one time and then it finished. Right? That was it. That was all it did. It checked one time. We want it to continually be checking. And so what we've got to do is we've got to wrap this if statement inside a forever. Notice that top go to X is not getting repeated forever. That we do want to do once. But this if statement, we want to forever be checking. And so now I'll put it on here, and now I'll run it again. Cool. And so now it's actually checking many times. It's always checking instead of just one time. And you'll notice that my length is growing pretty rapidly. The game is getting harder in a hurry, which I think is kind of fun. And then also the apple is successfully hopping to a new location. By the way, it's totally possible for the apple to show up within the snake body. And right now that would be fine. So there, you can see I got it right away. It's just kind of like a freebie apple. And so there's nothing wrong with a freebie apple. I'm trying to be careful and not touch my own tail. But to be honest, the game right now, if I were to go through my own tail, it wouldn't do anything bad. In fact, I could just ram into the wall. Because there's no losing right now, right? Which is kind of good. All right, so seems to be working pretty well. One thing I didn't like, this is a nitpick. This is like Picky Dave here. See how we have this go to X random thing here and this go to X random thing here? That's the exact same code in two places. And when you're a software developer, that's kind of like it's what called code smells, right? Because if you change it, it's like, hey, you know what? I added more variables up here. I want to change this to be, 130 now. Well, then you've got to change it everywhere in your code, right? And so whenever you have the exact same chunk of code in two places, there's a couple ways you can fix it. You could make variables. You could have like top Y, top X, bottom X. But what we're going to do this time is we're going to make a function. And this function is going to be a very simple function. To make a function, it's called a block in Scratch. Click on My Blocks. And then click on Make a Block. And the block is going to be called, random position. Not really the world's greatest name, but it's just called random position. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to define what happens inside of random position. And what's going to happen inside of here is going to be, I'm going to break this apart for a minute and duplicate that line. What's going to happen is this stuff, right? Well, that's not any better. Now I've got it in three places. But what this is doing is this is defining a block of code, also called a function, and then I can call this function from other places. So what I'm going to do is instead of doing it right here, I'm going to actually throw this in the trash, and I'm going to drag in my custom block, random position. Same way here. I'm going to take this out, and I'm going to bring in my custom block. And you got to be really careful when you do things like this. I'm going to put it in just the correct spot. I'm going to put it right after I change my length. By the way, what would happen? This will be a disaster. What would happen if I put it down here? Well, it would go to a random position every frame, which would be kind of funny to see, but not really the goal of the game. So I'm going to put it in here. It's going to only change positions when it changes length when it's touching the snake. So that was just a minor little, Dave nitpick, but it is good whenever you have the same code in two places to make a function out of it, and then you can reuse that code. And the advantage is that if you ever want to tweak it, like maybe my 140 was actually not quite aggressive enough, I could have done 145, then it's only in one place when you've got that code. Cool. So my game is kind of fun to play. The only thing that's not so fun about my game is that you can't lose it, right? I mean, it's kind of neat that you can go right over your own tail. You can slam into the wall, but you're guaranteed to never lose. So it's not quite challenging enough. So the thing that I want to add is I want to add a way to lose the game. All right, so how do I lose the game? Well, if you go over to the snake and you find the main chunk of code, I'm just going to zoom in on it here. The way you would lose the game is that you're going to move 5, make a clone, and then check to see if you've lost the game. So I'm going to bring in an if statement and put it right on the bottom here. Now there's 2 ways you can lose the game. You can be touching your tail, which is that other color, or you can be slamming into the wall. So there's 2 ways you can lose. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to operators, and I'm going to grab an OR operator. So it's this diamond that looks like an OR. And all this does is that just gives me, I go from 1 hexagon shape to 2. So if it's this or this. First way I can lose, sensing. I'm going to grab touching mouse pointer, because you can see that touching mouse pointer also has the option to say touching edge. So one way I could lose would be if I'm touching the edge. That will be a loss. How else can I lose? Well, the other way I can lose is that if I'm touching my tail. Now there's a couple ways to determine touching your tail. I don't want the head color, but I do want the tail color. And so the tail color is that light purple. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to check to see if I am touching my tail, right? So if I ram into my tail, because remember my sprite is just the one head spot, right? And if that head hits the tail, then I want to say game over. By the way, right now I can slam into the wall because I do trigger this if on edge true, but it doesn't do anything on the inside. All right, so let's go ahead and do this touching color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab touching color, and you can see right now it says touching color red. So how do you get it to be the tail color? Well, one way you can do it is you can click on this color. Right now mine's red, and you can try your best to hit about the same color of purple. That will not work. If you
very
look at,
small chance.
Yeah, very small chance. If you look at this, you can see that there's 100 different colors. There's 100 different saturation levels. There's 100 different brightnesses. And so in order to actually have it be the right shade of purple, well, it's not even close right now, it doesn't look right, I would have to get all 3 numbers to match. And so it's kind of like a 1 in 100, a 1 in 100, and a 1 in 100. What are we up to? 1 in 100,000 of actually getting the right color. So somehow I've got to pick the color. And so that's what this thing down here is, this eyedropper tool. And so I'm going to click on this. I'll just show you what happens. And then what it does is it lets me like pick a color. Now, unfortunately, I don't have the color I want to pick anywhere on the screen. So I'm going to be sneaky. Here's what I'm going to do to be sneaky. I'm going to go into my snake, and I'm going to right now just change the color to costume 2. That is the color that I want to cause my death, right? So now I've got it on the screen. Now I can come back into here. I can use this. It's an eyedropper tool is what it's called. And so if I'm touching that color, then I want to lose the game, right? All right, and so what happens when I lose the game? What I'm going to do to lose the game is I'm going to say a little message. I'm going to say like what my final score was, and then I'm going to do a stop all. So let's go into looks. And the one I'm going to use is say hello for 2 seconds. Drag that in here. For now, I'm just going to type the word lose. And so I'm going to say that for 2 seconds. And then I'm going to go into control, and I'm going to find stop all. And I'm going to put it right after the lose. Now, it's important when you put in a stop all that you put it in the right position. If you were to put it here, it would stop all essentially every time through this loop. You'd have 1 frame worth of your game. So I'm going to make sure to put it in there. All right, so I'm going to see how I'm doing. So I can collect apples, which is cool. My tail gets longer. And then now I'm going to try to lose through the 2 ways to lose. One way to lose is to hit my own tail. So I'm going to try to grab my own tail here. Cool. And so it says lose. The other way you can lose is by running into a wall. That's easy. Just hands off, run into a wall, lose. Cool. Let's tell them what their score was, right? So right now my score is like 0.5, 1.5. I must have gotten 2 apples there, 2, 2.5. I would like to do more than just say lose. I would like to say your final score, right? So what I'm going to say is I'll say final score, colon, and then I'm going to put a space on here. And then I want to put in what their length was. How do you do that, right? And so what we want to do is we actually want to, some people call it concatenate. I want to concatenate the words final score with that length variable. How do I merge those together? Well, Scratch calls it join. Join is a green operator. And so if you scroll down, you can find join here. Unfortunately, I've got to type that final score again. And this time I am going to put a space at the end. So final score, space. And then where it says banana, that's kind of funny, I'm going to go to variables and put in my length. Also, we can show it for more than 2 seconds if you want. I'll show it for 4 seconds here. And so when I lose, so I'm going to try to get an apple or 2. I'll collect this one and ram the wall. Final score 1. Or final score 0.5. By the way, it kind of bothers me that my tail keeps moving after I lose, but you know what? I'm going to try to let that one go. All right, here I'm going to say 1.5. Final score 1.5. Cool, I'm happy with that. It'll save final score for 4 seconds, and then the game will out and out end. All right, I think we got just one feature left. That one last feature that I kind of like in games is I like to try to beat my highest score ever. I don't know if you're competitive like this. Man, I caught my tail there. So I got 2.5 that time, and then my goal is to try to be longer next time than I've ever been before. And so that's called like a high score or a top score, whatever you want to do it. And so what I would like to do is I would like to add a feature where it tracks our top score. I have to wait for it to go past there. Oh man, because if I do a really good game, I want to save that score. Oh, that was close. Then I crashed at 6 seconds. Let's make a new variable. This will be pretty quick. Make a variable. I'm going to call mine top score. If you prefer a high score, call it high score. Bob, which do you prefer? High score?
Top score. Top score is great.
Top score. I'm going to move top score up to this side, not that it matters. And what I'm going to do with top score is it starts off right now at 0, so that seems like a good thing. I'm going to check when my game ends if the length is bigger than top score, then I'm going to set the new high score. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make an if statement. And I'm going to start off putting this if statement just kind of like off on its own. The reason I do that is because if I try to put it in right now when it's empty, it tries to swallow stuff. I don't want it to swallow anything, so I'm just going to set it over here, and I'm going to fill it in. So what I want to check for, it's pretty, you can hear yourself say it. If length is greater than top score, so I can do that with operators with a greater than symbol here. And I'm going to compare length and top score. So if length, like my game this time, is bigger than top score, then I'm going to set the new top score. So I'm going to grab set, and I want to set the top score to whatever my length is. And that's pretty cool. And then it'd also be nice to say something. I'll just kind of say for an additional second, new high score. Or new top score. I got to be consistent. Cool. And then the next question is, where do I want to put this? I could put it before the final score, or I could put it after. The only important thing is that it sure better be before stop all. I think I'm going to sneak it right between the two. So I'm going to be able to move it now, and I'm going to put it right there between the two.
And I'm thinking, based on the shape of stop ball, you couldn't have put it after there if you tried. Is
Yeah,
that
that's
right?
true. Yeah, so here you go. I will try. And so it has a flat bottom, and so yeah, it won't even let you, right? So that's kind of nice of them to not even let you. All right, so it goes above stop ball. All right, so the top score is currently 0, and so as I'm playing, I can see that I'm definitely going to be setting the top score. I'm going to go ahead and lam into the wall here. So it says final score is 1.5, and then it'll say new top score. So that means I set the top score. If I try to beat it again here, I can see the 2 are going. I'm going to go to 2, 2.5. I'll go with 3. And so my final score was 3, and I got a second to look at it. Sure enough, beat the new all-time hop score. I think that this game is almost good to go. I want to do one more minor thing. Let's say that your dad plays, right? Dads are really good at games. Let's say he gets like 15 seconds, right? That's all well and good. That's good for him. But if somebody ever gets like an amazing high score, that's great. Good job. Kudos. But it would be nice to eventually reset it so that other people could try to get the top score without having to beat the ridiculous score. And so it'd be nice to, man, I went back in on myself. That was silly. So it'd be nice to have some way to reset the top score. So right now it's 9. Good job. I think an easy way is to just listen for somebody to press a certain key. So I'm going to go to events. And if anybody presses the R key, where's R at? If anybody presses that, then I'm just going to set the high score, top score, back to 0. So right now, if I just press R key, R is for reset, I can reset the top score. Cool. I think that this is getting to be a pretty fun game. Whoa. There are a few minor bugs in this game. We're aware of them. One of the minor bugs is that if you turn too fast, you can actually, like if I hit down left, like really fast. Whoa, why didn't that kill me, Bob? I thought that should have killed me.
I was not glancing at the screen at the time. It looked like when I looked up, your tail was on itself. That right there looks like. How does it determine touching? Is it completely based on the image, or is it based on the center?
I thought that it was based on the image.
That's what I thought.
But based on that right there, yeah, it gave me a little bit of a. Okay, it looks like it's based on the. Well, I don't know what it's based on, but I definitely got away with it a little bit. But you can
that apple goes away before I think you even. I have a hard time seeing you touch that apple before it disappears.
Yeah, so I would assume it's anywhere type of thing. It
seems to be.
So
is there a ring around that?
So if I do it,
purple that
if I do down right, oh no, so that was enough to hit it. So it must have been somewhere in the middle. But at any rate, if you turn too fast, you can totally kill yourself. And so you do need to make sure not to turn too fast. We consider that a feature, but there you can see I left a little bit. There I left nothing. Ooh, I got away with it that time. But just do be aware that, there I got away with it somewhat. But yeah, there I hit the tail. Cool. It's a pretty fun game. It's really simple. We recommend that you usually click share on your games.
Really quick, if you're wrapping up, I thought that the tail was growing longer than in the original solution.
Yeah. So if we wanted to do that, this is a your choice type of thing. You could adjust how quickly the tail grows. The original solution did 0.1, which was fun, but it's more of a marathon, right? And so your tail grows very, very slowly, and so you get some epic games. I changed mine to 0.5. You could do whatever you wanted, right? So maybe every apple is going to increase my tail this time by 3 seconds, right? And so you could do whatever you would like. I think that there will be a limit to the size of the tail based on the number of clones that's allowed. So whatever you find fun, this is your game. Oops, there you go, I got 51. But if you want it to grow faster, you could do that. I think that a good number is probably, I mean, I liked half a second. This is growing a little too quickly. But this is the neat thing about making your own games. Yeah, there you go. We got the bug of I ran out of clones for a little bit there. So a few tweaks that we could make. I recommend you set the length back to around half, or you could do what Mackenzie did, which was the 0.1. So whichever you prefer is totally fine with me. Cool. I think that's a game. Bob, you want to reflect on it for a little bit for us?
Yeah, as you saw, as Dave was going through the design of this game, there were a lot of little interesting decisions along the way, and we benefited from using code that was provided to us by Dave's student. A lot of times you can use a game for inspiration. You probably saw at the end there, Dave added the press the R key and make the top score reset. My mind started going about all sorts of secret functionality that you can put into a game if you're creating your own game. Like, say you decide that you want to automatically move the apple, you could change or add a when A is pressed, and then do some other random code. A secret jump your score up by 10 points if you know how to press. You can cheat, which isn't a good thing. We don't advocate for cheating, but there's a lot of games that I used to play back in the day that had all sorts of little secret codes that if you knew about them, you could do different things. So it's kind of fun to think about your own game design. Whenever we get done and stop our videos, that's a stopping point for us. But you can continue to add to the game, add features. You can also stop short if there's things that you didn't really like. It looks like Dave added a couple of keys here.
I've got a fun little idea. So if somebody else
right.
plays it, you don't have to do these by any means. If somebody else plays your game, you could very secretly use WASD to move the apple around on them. I thought that this would be a fun idea.
A second player could be sitting there pressing the.
Yeah, you could. So what WASD are pretty common. We use those. I don't know if we used those last time or not. So A would be negative X, and then D would be. Oops, I grabbed a set there. I meant to use a change. You do not have to do this, right? This is just me
some
being
fun
silly.
gravy.
But if I put this into here, then all of a sudden I can now, when somebody else tries to play, so they're playing their game and they're doing this, and then I just kind of move the apple on them, right? So, but I mean, who does? Oh, you want the apple? Oh, too bad. And the apple is, by the way, much faster than the snake. So no matter what, there's no way the snake's gonna ever catch the apple. The fun things that you can do to an unobservant player.
For those excited by that idea, you can check out our 2-player game sequence that we did back in Camp 2023, maybe.
Yep. Good times. All right.
A plug. One other thing, a mini correction in the middle of that. We did some math. You saw that Dave was doing the chances of finding the purple 100 times 100 times 100 is actually 1 in a million.
Oh, cool. Appreciate it.
One in a million chance there. I mean, it's better because you would have gotten in the light purple, probably a much better chance, but a very small chance, and the eyedropper so much better. Goals of the day, we hit all these. You saw how to move via the keyboard events, the arrows. At the end there, we saw how to include letters to move something else. Clones were very useful and very clever in this particular case. You'll see in our next game, the big game that we create, clones are more about creating multiple versions of an enemy. But in this game, it was to extend our tail and to cleverly create this appearance of a long snake. You'll note, we did not have a long snake. We had a whole bunch of circles that were all following each other so that it looked like a snake. It very much looks like a snake and it plays like a snake, but it's just a bunch of clones. So that was a clever way to use that clone feature. If you go back to the goals of the day slide, we've got the variables that we saw again, both with our length that increased over time. And again, variables are used to remember things. We do it all the time as humans. We need a mechanism to do that in our games. That's a variable. And we did it at the end with top score. Functions, Dave showed us a very nice way to take code that we want to repeat and create a block. That's what it's called in Scratch, as Dave mentioned. And that is just very clean coding to create these blocks that you're going to potentially reuse. And then we saw if statements again, the conditionals, we saw randomness in terms of where the apple was going to appear. And we saw how weight in this case actually changed the appearance of our snake and the way the game played. A lot of times it's just to throw in a nice pause. And as Dave pointed out, weight 0 really isn't weight 0 because there's so many other things going on as the code loops. It's always going to wait for a little bit. The wait function or the wait line of code is usually an additional weight. So yeah, in the end, coding is fun. You can do this. This game took us about 45 minutes to put together. So following along with the video, hopefully you have a fun game to play as well.
Cool. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.